Amara Johnson sat in the sleek, modern office of her father, Marcus Johnson, the CEO of one of the most successful cleaning services companies in the country. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but Amara's focus was on the man across the desk. Marcus, a self-made millionaire with a reputation for toughness, leaned back in his leather chair, studying his daughter with a mix of pride and skepticism. "You want to do what?" Marcus asked, his deep voice tinged with disbelief. Amara straightened her posture, her determination unwavering. "I want to go undercover as a cleaner. For 2 weeks. I need to understand the company from the ground up, how employees are treated, how they treat each other, and how they treat our clients. If I'm going to take over one day, I need to know the truth." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression a blend of amusement and concern. "Amara, you've just graduated from one of the best business schools in the country. You don't need to scrub floors to understand this business." "But I do," she insisted, her voice firm. "I need to see it for myself, not through reports or secondhand stories. I need to live it." Marcus sighed, running a hand over his closely cropped hair. He admired his daughter's ambition, but worried about the risks. "You realize what you're asking, right? Cleaning is hard, thankless work. And if anyone finds out who you are—" "They won't," Amara interrupted. "I'll use a fake name, keep a low profile, and blend in. I just need 2 weeks." Marcus studied her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, but if things get too tough, you pull the plug immediately." "Understood." Amara smiled, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Understood." The next morning, Amara stood in front of a rundown office building, one of her father's many client sites. Dressed in a plain uniform, her hair pulled back, and her usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy, she introduced herself as Maya, a new hire. The supervisor, a gruff woman named Linda, barely glanced at her before handing her a mop and bucket. "You'll start in the bathrooms," Linda said, her tone dismissive. "Don't slack off or you're out." Amara nodded, gripping the mop tightly. As she walked toward the restrooms, the weight of her decision settled on her shoulders. This was no longer a theoretical exercise, it was real, and as the first whiff of cleaning chemicals hit her nostrils, she knew her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The game was on. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Amara, now Maya, stood in the cramped supply closet, staring at the array of cleaning products. The sharp scent of bleach and ammonia burned her nostrils, a stark contrast to the polished, air-conditioned offices she was used to. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and grabbed the mop and bucket. Her first task, cleaning the restrooms on the 3rd floor. As she pushed her cart down the hallway, she noticed the sideways glances from her new co-workers. Some nodded politely, while others ignored her completely. A few whispered among themselves, their laughter sharp and dismissive. Amara kept her head down, reminding herself why she was here. In the restroom, she rolled up her sleeves and got to work. The grime was worse than she'd expected, stained sinks, overflowing trash bins, and floors that hadn't seen a proper scrub in weeks. As she scrubbed, her hands began to ache, and the reality of the job hit her hard. This wasn't just physically demanding, it was mentally exhausting. During her lunch break, Amara sat in the cramped break room, picking at a sandwich. Across the table sat Maria, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a warm smile. "First day?" Maria asked, her voice kind. Amara nodded. "Yeah, it's a lot." Maria chuckled. "You'll get used to it. Or you won't. Most new hires don't last a week." Amara hesitated, then asked, "How long have you been here?" 5 years, Maria replied, her tone tinged with resignation. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills." "Barely." As they talked, Amara learned that Maria was a single mother working 2 jobs to support her kids. She dreamed of going back to school, but couldn't afford the time or money. Amara's heart ached for her. But before she could say more, a loud voice interrupted. "Maya, break's over. Get back to work," Linda barked from the doorway. Amara quickly stood, tossing her trash in the bin. As she left the break room, she noticed Jamal, a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 20s, mopping the hallway. He gave her a small nod, his expression unreadable. The rest of the day was a blur of scrubbing, mopping, and dusting. By the time her shift ended, Amara's body was sore, and her spirit was tested. But it wasn't the physical labor that bothered her the most, it was the way some employees treated each other. She'd overheard snide remarks, seen corners being cut, and witnessed a lack of respect that made her blood boil. As she walked to her car that evening, Amara clenched her fists. This was just the beginning. She had 2 weeks to uncover the truth, and she was already realizing it might be uglier than she'd imagined. By the end of her first week, Amara had settled into a rhythm, though her body still ached from the relentless physical labor. She'd grown closer to Maria, who had taken her under her wing, and Jamal, who, despite his quiet demeanor, had a sharp sense of humor that occasionally broke through his stoic exterior. Together, they formed an unlikely trio, finding small moments of camaraderie in the grueling work. One afternoon, as they cleaned a large conference room, Maria shared her dream of becoming a nurse. "I just want to do something that matters, she said, wiping down the table with a tired smile. Amara nodded, her heart heavy. "You'd be amazing at it. Have you looked into scholarships or programs?" Maria sighed. "Every year. But between the kids and the bills, it's impossible. Maybe one day." Jamal, who was vacuuming nearby, chimed in. "I get it. I'm saving up to start my own landscaping business. But it's hard when you're stuck in a job that doesn't value you." Amara listened intently, her resolve deepening. These were good people, hard workers who deserved better. But not everyone in the company shared their integrity. Later that day, Amara witnessed something that made her blood run cold. She was cleaning a break room when she overheard Linda, the supervisor, talking to another employee. "Just take the tips from the desks," Linda said with a smirk. "They'll never notice. And if they do, blame it on the new girl." Amara froze, her grip tightening on the mop. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Linda wasn't just cutting corners, she was stealing from clients and setting up others to take the fall. That evening, as Amara clocked out, she pulled Jamal aside. "Have you ever noticed anything off about Linda?" Jamal's expression darkened. "Yeah, she's been skimming tips for years. Everyone knows, but no one says anything. She's got too much power." Amara's mind raced. She wanted to expose Linda immediately, but she knew she had to be careful. If she revealed her identity too soon, the whole mission would be compromised. As she drove home, Amara replayed the day's events in her mind. The bond she'd formed with Maria and Jamal were real, but so were the betrayals she'd witnessed. She was walking a tightrope, torn between her loyalty to her new friends and her duty to the company. The stakes were higher than she'd imagined, and as she pulled into her driveway, one thought consumed her. How far was she willing to go to make things right? The tension in the air was palpable as Amara arrived for her shift the next morning. The previous day's discovery about Linda's theft had left her restless, but she was determined to stay focused. She had a plan: gather more evidence, document everything, and bring it to her father when the time was right. But fate had other ideas. Midway through the afternoon, Amara was cleaning a private office when she heard raised voices in the hallway. Curious, she stepped out to see a client, a man in a wheelchair trying to navigate around a cart left carelessly in the middle of the aisle. "Excuse me, could someone move this?" the man asked politely, though frustration edged his voice. Instead of helping, a group of employees, including Linda, stood nearby, snickering. One of them mimicked the man's movements, eliciting laughter from the others. Amara's stomach churned as she watched the scene unfold. Without thinking, she rushed forward, pushing the cart out of the way. "I'm so sorry about that, sir." "Let me help you," she said, her voice steady but firm. The man nodded, his expression a mix of relief and irritation. "Thank you. It's nice to see someone with common decency." As Amara guided him down the hallway, she could feel the weight of her coworker's stares. Linda's voice cut through the silence like a knife. Well, look who's trying to be a hero. You think you're better than us, Maya?" Amara turned to face her, her patience snapping. "No, I just think we should treat people with respect. Is that too much to ask? The break room erupted into murmurs. Linda stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. You've got a big mouth for someone who's been here less than 2 weeks. Maybe you should learn your place. Amara held her ground, her heart pounding. My place is doing the job I was hired to do, not stealing tips or mocking clients. The room fell silent. Linda's face turned red with anger, and she took a step closer, her voice low and threatening. You better watch your back, Maya. You're not as untouchable as you think. Amara knew the game was up. She couldn't stay undercover any longer. Without another word, she turned and walked out, her mind racing. She needed to talk to her father, now. As she drove to the company's headquarters, her hands clenched the steering wheel. The betrayal, the disrespect, the toxic culture, it all needed to end. And she was the one who had to end it. The breaking point had come, and with it the promise of change. The conference room was packed with employees, their murmurs filling the air as they waited for the unexpected company-wide meeting to begin. Amara stood at the front, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. Beside her, Marcus Johnson, the CEO, watched his daughter with a mix of pride and apprehension. Thank you all for coming, Amara began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. I know this is unusual, but there's something you need to know. She paused, scanning the faces in the crowd. Maria and Jamal stood near the back, their expressions a mix of confusion and curiosity. Linda, arms crossed, leaned against the wall, her usual smirk firmly in place. For the past 2 weeks, I've been working alongside you as Maya, a new cleaner, Amara continued. The room erupted into gasps and whispers. Linda's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of shock. Amara held up a hand, silencing the room. I did this because I wanted to understand our company from the ground up. What I found was both inspiring and heartbreaking. I met incredible people who work tirelessly to support their families. But I also saw a culture of disrespect, favoritism, and even theft. She turned to Linda, her gaze unwavering. Linda, you've been stealing tips and setting up others to take the blame. That ends today. You're fired. Linda's face turned red, but before she could protest, Marcus stepped forward. Amara's findings have been verified. Effective immediately, Linda and several others involved in misconduct are no longer employed here. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment settling over everyone. Amara took a deep breath, her voice softening. But this isn't just about cleaning house. It's about building something better. Maria, Jamal, your hard work and integrity haven't gone unnoticed. You're both being promoted to supervisory roles with raises and opportunities for further growth. Maria's eyes filled with tears, and Jamal broke into a rare smile. The room erupted into applause, the tension giving way to hope. As the meeting ended, Amara stayed behind, watching her co-workers, no, her team, file out with a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. You did good, kid, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Amara smiled, her heart full. This is just the beginning, Dad. We've got a lot of work to do. And as she walked out of the conference room, she knew she was ready for the challenge. The company and its people were in good hands. A new beginning had arrived, and Amara was ready to lead the way.